Ethan sat at the grand piano in his family's living room, his fingers hovering just above the keys. The silence pressed in on him, thick and suffocating. Normally, playing was his escape, a way to drown out the world and find solace in structure. But tonight, the music refused to come. All he could hear was the lingering echo of Lucas's guitar from the night before. That raw, imperfect melody kept circling in his mind, disrupting the neatly composed sonata he was supposed to be practicing for the upcoming competition. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts, followed by the familiar click of heels on the marble floor. His mother, Christine Park, entered the room, her presence as crisp and precise as her tailored suit. She crossed her arms, her gaze cool and expectant. "You've barely touched the piano all evening," she said, her voice smooth but with an undertone of disapproval. "You know how important this competition is, Ethan." Ethan pressed his lips together, trying to summon the words to explain what was swirling in his heart. How the pressure was crushing him, how his love for music was slipping away under the weight of expectations. But he knew it wouldn't matter. His mother never listened to anything that didn't align with her version of success. "I know," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Christine sighed, brushing a strand of perfectly styled hair behind her ear. "We've sacrificed a lot for your future. Don't let distractions ruin everything." Ethan's jaw clenched at the word distractions. He knew exactly who she meant. She had seen him with Lucas after their performance at the charity event, her eyes narrowing in quiet disapproval. "Stay focused, Ethan," she added sharply. "The competition is only 2 weeks away." With that, she turned and left, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands tightening into fists on his lap. The familiar knot of frustration and helplessness twisted in his chest. No matter what he did, it was never enough for them. The next day, Ethan forced himself to bury his emotions under practice, trying to convince himself that if he could just play perfectly, the weight on his shoulders might ease. But perfection felt impossible, especially with Lucas constantly creeping into his thoughts. By the time their next rehearsal rolled around, Ethan was already on edge. Lucas greeted him with a bright grin as he strolled into the practice room, slinging his guitar over his shoulder. "Hey, Maestro," Lucas said with a teasing lilt, as if the tension between them didn't exist. "Ready to make some magic?" Ethan forced a tight smile, sitting rigidly at the piano. "We should stick to the schedule today. No more improvising." Lucas raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift in Ethan's mood. "Wow. Okay, someone's in a mood." "I'm just saying," Ethan snapped. "We can't waste time. This project has to be perfect." Lucas blinked, taken aback by the sharpness in Ethan's tone. "Since when did you care so much about this project? I thought this was just an assignment." Ethan's hands clenched on the piano keys, the familiar frustration bubbling to the surface. "Not everything can be a joke, Lucas. Some of us have real expectations to meet." Lucas frowned, his easygoing demeanor slipping away. "And what I don't? Just because I don't live by some rigid schedule doesn't mean I don't take this seriously." "You don't act like it," Ethan shot back, the words sharper than he intended. "You just float through life like nothing matters." Lucas's expression darkened, a flicker of hurt crossing his face. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The air between them crackled with tension, the unspoken emotions they had kept at bay now bubbling to the surface. "Why do you care what I think anyway?" Ethan muttered, his voice softer now, almost bitter. "We're too different. This—" He gestured between them. "It's not gonna work." Lucas stared at him, hurt flashing in his eyes. "So what? You're just going to push me away because it's easier than figuring this out?" Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. His whole life had been about following rules, meeting expectations, and avoiding risks. He wasn't sure how to navigate something as unpredictable as his feelings for Lucas. Lucas scoffed, slinging his guitar back over his shoulder. "You know, Ethan, I thought you were different, but I guess I was wrong." Before Ethan could say anything, Lucas turned and walked out of the practice room, the door slamming shut behind him. The sound echoed like a final note hanging in the air. Ethan sat frozen at the piano, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had messed up, but the fear of stepping out of line, of disappointing everyone around him, felt too overwhelming to confront. That night, Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as guilt. He replayed the argument over and over in his mind, wishing he could take back his words. But part of him still felt paralyzed, afraid of what it meant to let someone like Lucas in. On the other side of the city, Lucas sat on the rooftop of his apartment building, strumming his guitar absent-mindedly. The stars blinked overhead, but he barely noticed them. His thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan, how closed off he was, how hard he tried to hide behind perfection. Lucas knew what it felt like to carry the weight of expectations, even if Ethan didn't realize it. But unlike Ethan, Lucas had learned to stop caring about what other people wanted from him. It hurt to see Ethan trapped in a world that didn't seem to appreciate him for who he really was. "Idiot," Lucas muttered to himself, plucking a soft, melancholic tune on his guitar. He wasn't sure if he was calling Ethan an idiot or himself. The next few days passed in a blur of silence between them. Ethan threw himself into his competition preparations, but his heart wasn't in it. The music felt cold, lifeless, just like the distance between him and Lucas. Lucas, meanwhile, buried himself in his band's rehearsals, trying to ignore the ache in his chest. But every song he played seemed to carry a trace of Ethan, a reminder of the connection they had shared, however brief. Both of them knew they had to face the music sooner or later, but neither was ready to admit that they couldn't go back to the way things were, not after what had already begun between them, a connection that was messy, imperfect, and terrifyingly real. And somewhere in the space between their two worlds, the melody of their unspoken feelings lingered, waiting to be played.